Witchcraft as an issue in African religion. Witchcraft is definitely an issue in Africa. And it has to be so if we agree with Sefardede. Sefardede says, if entrepreneurs refuse to expand their business because of the fear of envy leading to witchcraft attacks, then the whole country is suffering as a result of this belief system. This comes from Sefardede. Yeah. So in other words, witchcraft is based on a belief system, and that belief system has implications as far as our development is concerned. But what exactly is witchcraft? Yeah. It is definitely one feature of African religion that is difficult to ignore. But it is not exclusive to Africa. We find witchcraft in other societies too, African, European, and so on and so forth. But it is based on a belief that certain individuals possess and exercise spiritual and psychic powers for good or for evil. And such powers are often deemed to be inherent in the person or to have been acquired willingly or unwillingly. Again, societies do differ when it comes to the specifics, when it comes to witchcraft. But it is an issue that affects development. And we are interested in witchcraft because it has such a serious effect on development as we have defined above. It has a negative economic, psychological, health, and wider social implications. It undermines relationships, and it is very much a gender issue, as the victims of witchcraft beliefs are more or less women. So it is believed that while God, the deities, the ancestors, the wild spirits, and so on and so forth, are sources of misfortune, misfortune can also come from man's malice and spiritual malpractice. And those responsible are often an associate, a relative, a spouse, your child, your parent, and so on and so forth. And this misfortune that is due to witchcraft may take a variety of forms. It could be that there is failure in social and economic ventures. It could be illness, it could be accident, it could be injury, it could be death. And it is believed that some people have powerful spirits that do strange things. In other words, the spirits fly, they change into dangerous animals, they carry out nocturnal misadventures, and so on and so forth. So essentially, witchcraft is psychic and spiritual. Its modus operandi is invisible to the ordinary eye. It is only special people, witch doctors, prophets, and so on, who claim to be able to see what is happening. The characteristics themselves vary from society to society within Africa. In some societies, it is seen to be involuntary. For example, among the Azande, a witch may not know he or she is responsible for the harm that is caused to others. But some witches are said to be aware, that they are responsible for the harm. And in some cases, people are said to be born witches. Or, in other words, they have inherited the witchcraft potential from a parent. Okay? And yet in some societies, it may be that witchcraft has come about by accident. Some people acquire witchcraft by accident. It could be seen in some societies as a form of illness, which desires to be cured. Now we can contrast witchcraft with juju or black magic, what we call sorcery. Sorcery or juju or black magic is also the same as bad magic or bad medicine. That's how some people look at it. It is equally harmful. It may be based on learned techniques, and that's where the difference is. In the case of sorcery, the person who is doing it is supposed to have learned the technique. It's a technique, it's a manipulation of objects, which causes the harm to others. The witch does not need to manipulate objects. So in both cases, what is interesting is that proof is often hard to come by. There's no proof. So much of it is based on suspicion. What some witch doctor says or some diviner says. But occasionally, there is self-confession. Some people actually confess to being witches. Okay? What is happening is that witchcraft is very pervasive. Okay? It goes back a long way in human history. Okay? Some say They see it as something which is unscientific, a search for causes, a search for explanations to uncanny events. Okay, that's what they say about witchcraft. That's what they think it is. And in a sense, witchcraft is supposed to answer a certain question. And that question is why certain misfortunes happen the way they happen. So science, for example, answers the question how, and not always why. The why question is always the remote cause. And it may not be self-evident. Yet people need answers. The quest to explain persistence of witchcraft beliefs, even amongst scientific, this explains why even scientifically educated people still believe in witchcraft. Because there is always the why question that science does not provide an answer to. Okay? Something has happened to me, it shouldn't happen that way. Why? Okay? You say a lorry hit me, but everybody knows that lorries don't hit people all the time. Why me? Why at that time? That question we're asking which is why, is explained by witchcraft. In Western societies and other belief systems, they say, oh, it's bad luck. The African doesn't believe in bad luck. They say, no, it's not bad luck. It's not just luck. It's not chance. This is witchcraft. We must look for the witch. Okay? Now, what you see are what I call hilarious church posters. Okay? And you can see that modern-day African churches are capitalizing on this witchcraft thing, you see. So here we have how to identify a witch. So a whole church has come out with a big billboard advertising itself, how to identify a witch. So Operation Point and Kill, okay? In other words, this church is there to deal with witches for you, okay? So it's important even to churches. These religious people believe in it, okay? So from the academic perspective, the question is not whether witchcraft exists or not, or whether witches are capable of the harm that people say they cause to others. Okay, that's not the issue. What is significant from the sociological perspective is the effect of the beliefs on the society. What makes it that makes it a developmental issue. Witchcraft beliefs can have positive or negative economic effects and gender implications. It affects the community's life, individual participation, as well as choices. And negative effects of witchcraft outweigh the good ones. So witchcraft has both positive and negative effects, but the negative ones outweigh the positive ones. So witchcraft and fault finding. You see, as the evidence for the fault is often difficult to establish, witchcraft inevitably becomes something which is based on suspicion and accusation. So who tends to be a witch? Who tends to be accused? It's important to look at the people who are often likely to be accused. Who are those people? You find that amongst that cohort are highly successful people. Okay? People who have achieved phenomenal success in life. Suspicion centers on them. And it is suspected that they have gained their success through spiritual malpractice. Also, the marginalized, women, children, widows, the childless, the orphan. These people, because they are marginalized, are supposed to have a grudge against everybody else. So if there's a misfortune, maybe they are the people responsible. Who else? The antisocial, the person who is cantankerous, is talkative. He is reticent. He doesn't talk. Okay? He's envious of others. He's engaged. He likes to engage in certain kinds of behaviors like incest, homosexual intercourse, and so on and so forth. These are called the witches. Okay? As well as people with extraordinary physique, the deformed, the very ugly, the very beautiful, the red-eyed. All of these people are suspected of witches because they look different. And of course, you can say technically then, who can be spared? We're all witches. So the next point is to illustrate how a 62-year-old woman was killed because she was suspected to have been responsible for bewitching a 23-year-old boy. Because of that, this woman was killed. Where is the belief? Where is the evidence? Also, a 9-year-old boy suffered neglect from his own parents and eventually died at the hands of his own parents because they were told by spiritualists that this boy was a witch. So therefore, due to his own parents' behavior, because they thought that was the way to deal, they were told that this was the way to deal with the boy, he eventually ended up dead. There's a case of, in this case, the boy was said to have this thing, always complained persistently of excessive heat in the body and so on and so forth. So some spiritualists says that is all the sign of witchcraft. So the boy died, was killed. There's a case of the 4 who perished in a fire in Kumasi. And why? Because a 45-year-old woman set fire to the house because she accused her own mother and a 14-year-old son of bewitching her. She was suffering from several sexual ailments. She had asthma, she had diabetes, she had hypertension, she had stomach ulcer, and so on and so forth. So she thought her mother was responsible for all that. So one day she decided to kill everybody in the house, lock the door, set fire to the whole house so that everybody dies. Yeah. So this is what the whole thing can amount to. And what you see here is a witch, part of a witch's village or camp. So we talk about camps, and in the certain parts of the north, in Gambaga, in Kukuo, in Ngani, in Pasingpe, in Patenga, in those places, there are special places where only witches live. In other words, people who have been accused of being witches are simply ostracized. Okay? So we know who tend to be accused of being witches. The other question is, who are those who are accused? Who are those who are doing the accusing? You'll be surprised to find that ritual experts are in the forefront. Witch doctors, medicine men, some pastors, and religious people. These are the people who are accusing others of being witches, and they insist that those who should be brought to them for treatment. Sometimes they're unsuccessful. You see, who instead of looking at their own life to answer to the question, why I'm unsuccessful, rather seek to find a scapegoat. Somebody else is believed to be responsible for their lack of success. So those people are the witches. So those who are envious, okay, they are jealous of other people, they harbor a jealousy, so they visit that on more successful people by accusing them of being witches. Okay? Competitors. See, when people are competing, especially co-wives, for example, okay, they tend to accuse each other. Maybe one wife is more successful than the other. The competition that exists between them is expressed in the idiom of witchcraft. So you find that invariably it's close kin, people who are close to you, your associates. These are the people who tend to accuse you. Now, what is the harm that is done when we consider the witchcraft beliefs? Number one, the witches may be maltreated, ostracized, and even killed, okay, depending on the society. It is also a question of character defamation. Somebody just comes around to accuse you of being a witch without any justification. Soiling your character, that is bad. And sometimes people, instead of searching for pragmatic solutions to their problems, rather put all the blame on witches. Okay, instead of finding out why is it that I'm failing my exams, I'm trying to sit up and find a solution, you just give up and you're rather looking for witches to punish, because I think the witches are responsible for that. So it leads to distrust of kin. People cannot even trust their own relatives and associates because they think that they could be harming them through witchcraft. There is also the reluctance to exhibit your potential and your achievement and your talent. People deliberately hide their talent for fear that if people get to know that I'm that good, they will think I'm a witch. Okay? And the people who are accused, when it happens that way, people are subject to dangerous ordeals. They have to drink all kinds of concoctions to prove whether they are witches or not. Some of these concoctions, the question is, are they safe to drink? Is it possible that they are poisonous and they can undermine some people's health? Okay? And when it happens that way, then it's enough evidence that you are a witch. Okay? So what happens is that witchcraft, at the end of the day, marginalizes the marginalized. Okay? You're already on the periphery, you have problems. Now witchcraft actually comes to condemn you completely and bury you. Okay? Now, the next transparency is about a child who could not go to school in the northern part of the country because that child was said to have been a witch. So the child goes to school, cannot stay in school, has to relocate to another school because the schoolmates laugh at her, they make fun of her, they brutalize her. Eventually, she gets married. After she's dropped out at the age of 22, she's compelled to go and get married. She's impregnated by somebody. The person then finds an excuse to abandon her because the person now comes to say that my wife is a witch. So, yeah. And this is the effect that witchcraft can have on people, okay? And it's cumulative. You see, it starts with the school. So this child drops out of school. It gets impregnated. But does she find a man who will stand by her? The man who should do that turns around to reject her and the child by saying that they are all witches. Okay? So these are some of the things. The question is, are there any positives? Well, there are positives. There's nothing which is all negative. Okay? There are certain kinds of positive, but is it enough? It's not. So the association of the weak with witchcraft may also mean that some powerful people are very careful about abusing the rights of the weak. If the person is weak, you cannot be sure that if I slap the person, because I'm stronger than the person, it is okay. Maybe the person is a witch and can get even with you. Okay? It also means that the demands of some of the needy, the vulnerable, are attended to. Somebody comes begging, say, hey, this woman or this man, is it possible that the person is trying to set up a trap for me? So that if I refuse, then that will give the person a pretext to bewitch me. So let me just give the person whatever he is asking for. It also promotes an egalitarian society. It ensures that, look, people who are too successful share that success. And they don't go around flaunting their wealth, displaying it in a very obscene way to the annoyance of everybody else in the society, because you fear that, hey, if everybody knows that I'm that rich, hey, the witches will get even with me, or they'll accuse me of being a witch. So be very careful. And I would also say that it promotes psychic healing, because some of these cases are psychotic cases. So that brings those kinds of sick people to the so-called witch doctors who give them treatment. And although witch doctors are very often condemned, let us not forget that there are times when they're more successful than the conventional psychiatrists. Okay? So there are positives as far as witchcraft belief systems are concerned. So that also ends this.